Obviously, our topic tonight is taxes, so I thought I'd just give you a few quick stats to get things rolling, just something to think about going forward. If you sell off an investment and pay a 15% tax, capital gains tax, dividend tax, whatever that is, the next investment has to yield 17.64% for you to get back to even, to make that dollar whole again. At a 20% tax rate, it takes a 25% return on your next investment to get whole again. At a 28% tax rate, that next investment has to yield 38.88% for you to get back to even. So as we talk about taxes, and Barack Obama thinks that by raising the capital gains tax 5% or 10% that it won't make a difference, I would ask him to think again and actually go back and do the calculations, because cutting tax rates is proven over and over and over again to actually increase tax revenue. The state of Maryland last year doubled the cigarette tax to $2 a pack in an effort to raise revenue to fight to have money for healthcare costs. And they were really awakened this year when cigarette sales fell by 25%, and now they're in a budget crisis, in their words. So again, what we've done tonight, our executive director, Jonathan Bandy, has done a lot of hard work to put together a distinguished panel for us. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna get started, go through our invocation, our pledge, and then we'll get the program on the road. Now to get our program started, Mr. Chad Adams is gonna be our moderator tonight, and just to tell you a little bit about him. Chad Adams is the director of the Center for Local Innovation, Vice President for Development of the John Locke Foundation, and former Vice Chairman of the Lee County Board of Commissioners. He was the first elected a commissioner in 1998 and recently completed his second term. He is a graduate of UNCW, attended graduate school at North Carolina State University, and is a fellow of the North Carolina Institute for Political Leadership. In 2002, Chad was recognized by the North Carolina Junior Chamber of Commerce as one of 5 outstanding young North Carolinians for his political and community work, and was recognized by the National Junior Chamber of Commerce as one of America's most outstanding young leaders with the Charles Culp Memorial Award in 1998. Chad has appeared on CNBC as well as numerous television stations across the state. His op-eds have appeared in dozens of newspapers, and he is also the primary guest host for the Take a Stand radio show in Asheville. Ladies and gentlemen, Chad Adams.
Well, by now, most of you are familiar with the work of the John Locke Foundation. The good news for you is that you won't be hearing a speaker from the John Locke Foundation tonight. You're going to be hearing a lot of other experts on tax policy. And certainly there's nothing that is more important to this kind of group than what's happening to us at the national and federal level, and even, national, state, and local level, with Congress with approval ratings at 9%, and they're still talking about enacting massive new taxes. Certainly with our state legislature enacting billion-dollar-plus tax increases every year. You know, it seems like it's only heading in one direction, and even when we listen to the national news, all we hear about, we don't hear about tax rates coming down. What we hear about are you going to enact any new taxes? You know, when you hear McCain say no new taxes, or you hear Obama say we're just going to change, we're going to give everybody a tax cut, but we're going to raise taxes on 80% of Americans with capital gains. There's a lot to be discussed here, and we are very fortunate tonight to have a wonderful panel of guests to discuss this and many other topics, and all I get to do is introduce them. What's going to happen? One thing I would ask, though, if you have any cell phones, turn them off, or at least set them on vibrate so we don't interrupt our panelists as they discuss things. As you are listening to them tonight, please, I encourage you to write down questions. What's going to happen is you're going to listen to each one of our speakers for about 10 minutes, and then we'll go to the next speaker and we'll go through this, and at the end of their talks we're going to go through, have your questions passed in, and then we will go through those and ask our panelists kind of to keep things flowing. So I want to make sure we get good questions for our panelists. Also, want to thank the YRs for hosting this event. They've done a marvelous job and appreciate all of you coming out. We are having a small experiment up front with Al Gore's global warming just to see if we can tolerate a degree or two temperature change up here, and it looks like so far we might make it, and without any cap and trade or any new taxes. Now, also, if you get a chance, FreedomWorks, the Locke Foundation, and Civitas all have tables at the back. Please, if you would, stop by those tables, check out their information. They work very hard to get your attention, and please take their stuff and win those arguments at the coffee shops in your respective communities. Our first guest tonight is Patrick Gleason. Patrick is the State Affairs Manager at Americans for Tax Reform and graduated from NC State, go Wolfpack, with degrees in political science and history. He now resides in Washington, D.C., and we are very fortunate to have Patrick with us tonight, and he's going to share with us his thoughts on the current tax situation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chad. It's great to be back in North Carolina. Like Chad said, my name is Patrick Gleason, and I work for Americans for Tax Reform. Americans for Tax Reform, commonly referred to as ATR, is a nonprofit advocacy organization. We're based in Washington, D.C. We were founded in 1985 by Grover Norquist, and this was done so at the request of then President Ronald Reagan. Quite simply, what ATR has done since 1985, and our main primary mission is to work to oppose and defeat all tax increase efforts at the federal, state, and local level. Coupled that, we of course support and work for the passage of legislation and law that would reduce the tax burden. ATR is known as the sponsor of the Taxpayer Protection Pledge. For those not familiar with that, the pledge is signed by lawmakers and candidates as a way to make a written promise to their constituents that they will oppose any efforts to increase taxes and vote no on any legislation with a tax hike in it that comes across their desk or up for a vote. As it currently stands, we have about 192 members of the House of Representatives, 41 senators, and President Bush have signed the pledge. That's at the federal level. At the state level, we've had over 1,200 state legislators sign the pledge across the country, and as well as 8 governors. It's proven to be an effective tool in drawing a line in the sand against all tax increases, all tax-like proposals, whatever they may be, income, sales, gross receipts, sin taxes, you name it. This has been an effective tool for drawing the line and holding the line in the sand. In fact, I'd just like to let everyone know that we've had actually a great measure of success at the federal level in opposing tax increases, and I just would like to call attention to illustrate this to the last 15 years. I do so because the last 15 consecutive years, there's not been a tax increase passed and signed into law at the federal level. Why is this unique? Well, this is the only 15-year period in the history of the United States, going back to George Washington, where we have not had a tax increase. In fact, in the last 15 years, we've had a few tax cuts, some small, some large, but they all head in the right direction. So we've made a lot of progress at the federal level. That's not to say that there's still threats. Ever since in 2006, the Democrats took control of Congress, there's been bills that have been passed that have included tax hikes. We've held these off with having a pledge signer in the White House, and he's vetoed these. So, but this, I'd like to talk about what we're looking to see on the tax front between now and the end of the year, which for people on Capitol Hill is essentially November. Nothing's going to happen after that, and not much is going to happen before that. But there are some bills with tax implications that are coming up for vote that I just wanted to explain to people. One is surrounding the major issue of maybe this election in our time, energy. The Democrats are likely to bring an energy bill up to vote, and what it looks to include, the provisions that they will insert. One would be a major tax hike on all corporate income just for energy companies. That will be one provision. Another will be to double tax foreign activity of energy companies. So they ConocoPhillips drills in Brazil, they get taxed by Brazil, but U.S. wants to also tax them at our rates. We'd be the only country to impose double taxation and creating a major competitive disadvantage. That's one thing that will be in it. Another would be a host of spending for a ton of spending on green programs, i.e. Energy resources that are not viable without subsidies or in the free market. So those are the major components of the legislation we're looking to see come up. We're hoping it will go down in the Senate. If not, something were to happen, President is more than likely to veto that. So that's one thing. The other is the extenders package. What this is a package of little tax cuts on all sorts of economic activity. And it's called the extenders because it has to be voted on and extended every year. It has major implications for business, such as research and development tax credits, a host of important tax credits and cuts. The Democrats don't want to pass that without a permanent tax hike to pay for it. So what they're saying is they want a permanent tax hike to pay for a one-year extension of the extenders. So that's another thing that doesn't look good. Looks to come up for a vote. We plan on that going down through the support of pledge signers and, at worst comes to worst, a veto from the president. So that is the federal tax level. I talked about some of the recent trends, what's coming up at the federal level. That's taxes. We've had some, like I said, progress with that. Well, many people say spending and taxes are two sides of the same coin, opposite sides of the same coin. How do we address spending and make it a vote-moving, election-deciding issue like we've been able to do to some degree with taxes? Americans for Tax Reform, along with a number of other groups, believe the answer to that is transparency. I'm referring to transparency in government spending, having all the expenditures online in a searchable format. Not only expenditures, but contracts and grants, easily accessible to the public, bloggers, the media.